I will now call to order the study session meeting of June 15th, 2020. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held electronically, and members of the council are participating remotely, pursuant to the council's electronic participation policy and to practice social distancing. Public access to the meeting is available on the local government channel 8 for Comcast subscribers and on the city's YouTube channel online and by telephone using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Good evening, Joanna. Will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Here.
Councilmember Witkovich.
Here.
Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Downing.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Duran Mullica.
Here.
Councilmember Escabel.
Here.
Okay, welcome everybody. So our first item for tonight's study session is the Road to Economic Recovery. Update number 3, Jason Loveland, our Director of Finance, will present this item. So I will pull this up for you, Jason. Welcome.
Cool. So, Meredith?
Yes.
You're going to pull up the presentation, right? Because I think I have 3 computers going now.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So I should, do you see it now?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Great. You're welcome. Jason, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Mayor Council, for having me tonight. So yeah, this is update number 3, really to go through April sales tax return, kind of a quick update on year-to-date sales tax, and then kind of what we see going forward. If you want to go to the next slide.
Sure.
It's, I guess, the next one after that as well. So April sales tax numbers were down 25%. The March sales tax was down 15%. So we were expecting to see a decrease in sales and use tax. 25% was a little bit better than we had projected, which was positive. And then a couple of highlights on this. You'll see sales tax down 20%. On the positive side, the marijuana special tax was up 4%, and then food for home consumption was up 7%. If you remember in March, those two numbers were quite a bit higher. Marijuana tax was up about 14%, and then food for home consumption was up about 40%. So we had that kind of an immediate rush.
How do you, I'm sorry. I can't raise my hand tonight, Jason. I'm sorry. I did though. How do you pull out food for home consumption? Is that run the grocery stores, or is that something different?
Yeah, so that should be the grocery, the 3% tax on sales tax on food at grocery stores specifically to take home and prepare.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then here's just if you don't like numbers and you like pictures, this is kind of just sharing the same information of showing the April sales tax. So just how we've done January, February, March, and then April. And then that red line indicates the change that we've seen for the year. So you can see January, February, we were up just slightly in sales tax, and then the big sharp decline down 15% in March, and then 25% down in April. Next slide. So we pulled out a couple of larger industry segments here, specific to April. You'll see restaurants and bars were down 40%. Again, they performed better than we had projected. We had projected them to be down about 60%. So I think they were creative. Delivery services were helpful in that, and takeout as well. So the marketing, sales, and then people's desire to dine out definitely helped. Again, down 40%. It's hard to say that something was good, but it was better than initially predicted. And then food So really that was up 20%. One thing that we didn't predict was an increase in grocery sales. And obviously people kind of flocked to the stores to buy groceries. So all in all, that's why April ended up being a little bit better than we had projected. But you can see the other retail areas and service areas all took pretty big hits in April. This is a chart that we've shown before. I guess the biggest piece to take away from here is on the far right, the out-of-state label. You can see that spike in 2020, that green bar. So in the out-of-state, that captures a lot of the online sales tax. So when people weren't able to go to stores, they went online, and we'll see an increase in April in that category, or that geographic area, if you will. The others, as not a surprise, down. You can see some that have some areas with grocery stores were down less, or even compared to the prior year. So then on the year-to-date performance on the next slide, we're down 10%. So through March, we were down 5%, with a decrease of 25% in April. It brings our year-to-date number down to be 10%. So the green line indicates where we had budgeted. So that was taking last year's performance, plus we had projected about 2.5% to 3% increase in sales tax. So you can see in March, we were down a little less than $400,000. In April, again, you can see a large decrease on the actual. And then we're just projecting out for May. We're under the same orders as far as business openings and kind of staying at home. So we're expecting that to stay relatively consistent and flat for the next month. And then June, and that's the increase in tax there is because it's a quarter end. And so we have more filers that are participating in quarterly filing. So you see an increase accordingly, but we'll still expect to see, 10 to 15% decrease in revenue for taxes as we move forward. This next slide, this is something that's in the monthly financial report each month. Again, just showing the geographic areas. You'll see Washington Point up in 2020, 104th in Huron also up, reflective of the grocery sales. Then the next slide. So if you like pictures and then we convert it to numbers, this is the same information, just for if you want to take a look at actual numbers and percentages that way. So you can see the sales that were happening year to date within the city's boundaries, again, down 10%. So here we're taking a look at the 2020 budget versus the new forecast. If you remember, we had kind of a low, medium, high impact scenarios. Yeah. We discussed the high impact scenario of potentially a net change in fund balance of being as great as $8 million. Right now, through the April sales tax being a little bit more positive and projecting out, we're looking at about a $4.5 million decrease to reserve. But specifically due to the pandemic, our use of reserves would be $1.5 million more than what we had budgeted. So if you see over on the right-hand side, we had budgeted for a change in fund balance of negative 3.1, and it looks like we'll be about a $4.6 million decrease. Revenue shortfall of $4 million. You can see there about $2.6 million in sales tax. And then we'll see other decreases with facility closures, charges for services for recreation programs, theater, passports, things like that, all add up. Additionally, fines and forfeitures, we'll see a change there. And then some of that state shared money will also be decreased. With that, from the budget to the forecast, we've also identified the $2.5 million or so of salary savings through our freeze and hiring. And then additionally, we found savings with reduced spending throughout departments. So right now, this is just a slide that's repetitive. We've seen it a couple different times of where we are expecting reserves to be over on that left column, 2020 amended budget, versus what the forecast is, just to indicate where we're going from the start of the year to where we think we'll be by the end of the year. And so we'll continue to monitor this. We're expecting May, like I said, to be pretty consistent with what happened in April as far as revenue being down.
Can you go back to that other slide, please? Back one, Meredith, page 14 of 15.
This one?
No, the one before it.
This one.
Right. So the year-end labor reserve, no, that next one, the next one. See that it says 13 of 15 on the bottom? I want 14.
Oh, you want 13?
Yeah. So our forecast right now for the end of the year is 20 million in reserve, right? I just want to make sure I'm reading it right, Jason.
Yes, correct.
20,906,000. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And what percentage is that? Because I know you did it.
It's around 75%.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, I've got 3 computers running, or I would have done it myself.
That's
I'll shut
okay.
up now.
So then just looking forward, clearly we're going to continue to do forecasts on a monthly basis as revenues come in and we get more information and make adjustments to those forecasts. We'll do that in accordance with preparing the 2021 budget. Right now, expecting a $2 to $3 million shortfall in order to balance the budget. So we're going to have to continue to look at different things to implement and evaluate cost savings measures throughout the budget process that we're kicking off right now. And then as we go through the budget process again, we'll have more updates on the other impacts that are going to trickle through to lottery proceeds through Conservation Trust Fund, which sometimes during recessionary times, there are more lottery proceeds because people play more, but that's not always the case. And then Capital Projects Fund, driven largely by taxes as well. We'll see a reduced revenue for 2021 there. So we're continuing to monitor and continue to update as necessary as we move forward. Does anybody have any questions?
Becky? Got some
No,
questions?
I'm actually good.
Okay,
Good. Thank you for asking.
just checking. Any other questions for Jason? I think it's good news. So thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you. Okay, so the second item is going to be presented by City Manager Geyer. Do you have a presentation tonight?
I do, not a specific PowerPoint, but if you'll open up the memo and go to page 2.
Will do.
Okay. So last week, Mayor and Council, you provided me with direction to bring back a couple concepts for street pole banners in expressing the city's support and solidarity with Black Lives Matters. So our communications team has done a great job putting together 2 concepts that you see here on the screen. And the recommendation that we have for you this evening is that we use both of them, not one or the other, but that we'll use both. And we plan to put up 16 banners, 8 of each design throughout the city. I'm trying to balance them throughout the different wards, given the proximity of some street pole banners. There's some banners that will be kind of on the border of particular wards, typically wards 2 and 3, again, based on the location of banners. But we'd like your feedback on the proposed design. And then if you go to the third page, Mayor, you will see specifically where we have in the orange and the outline in yellow dots where we're recommending placement of these 16 banners, and happy to answer any questions for you.
So these are your proposed. I'm sorry. Again, I'm going to apologize because I'm at a complete disadvantage right now. I'm a fish out of water. So
Yes,
this is where you want to put them?
Yes, correct. What we did was John Eisel drove around the city, did an inventory of where we have stay-at-home banners that go along with the ornamental holiday lights that we put up at the beginning of our COVID-19 response. We also plan to put up banners near the Justice Center that are specific to the police department core values. That was already set in motion several weeks ago, and we're just waiting to get those banners printed in-house. And then we have some of our 50th anniversary banners that need to come down, and those have remained up because we've had to shift resources and focus on other higher priority tasks. But what we'll be doing is swapping out banners that are on these current locations with one of the 2 banners that you see proposed before you this evening. So we're proposing 16 locations, and you welcome any feedback from City Council on the design and then the locations as well.
Personally, I like the banners a lot. I really do. They're nice. They're going to stand out. Perfect colors. My question to you is related to Ward 4. Or I'm sorry, Ward 2. I got in the wrong ward for a minute.
Hey there.
I can't. So is that the school where they're at? Or what is that? I can't, if I blow it up, I can't make it out. There's 4 dots, actually 5 dots in Ward 2. One looks like it's right off 112th, which is cool. And then there's these 4 that are by the green spot, but I can't make out what that green spot is.
The green spot is the City Hall building. So that's Community Center
Okay.
Drive, Councilmember Brown.
Okay.
So
And
there's,
will you extend that down to the rec center?
yes, so there's 4 banners proposed along this roadway. And so what you would see there would be 2 of each of the banners, 4 total. And then as you move over to Washington Street, there's 2 locations there. And then we're trying to capture our eastern boundary with the 2 locations just south off of York Street and 112th. And then the 2 locations on our southernmost boundary of Washington Street and 104th. And then as you move west, you see how we've captured a location there at 104th and Huron, and then the 4 locations near Croak Reservoir, and then westernmost boundary off of 112th and over by Northwest Open Space, the water treatment.
I would like to propose something on 120th, where we own that property. You know what I mean? The Safeway on the other side of Walgreens or something, if we could do that so that we show support to the people that are driving down 120th.
I'll have to check and see if we have the ability to do that. A lot of that right of way is City of Thornton. So can you be more specific, Councilmember Brown, about what property you think we own?
The north side is Thornton, the south side is ours.
Correct.
On 120th. From Washington down to Claude. So we have those businesses, by the Sonic and all of that. That's Northglenn, and I'd like to show it I'd like to show it on 120th too, because
Okay.
these other locations, don't get me wrong, Heather, they're great, but they're inside neighborhoods.
Right.
I think that we need to, just a couple, outside where our people that are traveling through our city or even traveling to the other end on 120th see it and see that we believe. That's just my suggestion.
Yeah, thanks. That makes more sense to me now. Staff will check with Excel and see if we can get used to those polls. And then we may have to buy some equipment, but I'll follow up with council, let you know if that's doable. Thank you for that feedback.
Any other questions or comments for Heather? Councilmember Downing, and then Mayor Pro Tem will be next.
Thank you. I do like both banners, and I was actually going to suggest if you had one over the other, that to use both. I think the designs are great, and the staff did a great job. I agree with Becky. Right there by Walgreens at 120th, we have a lot of traffic entering and exiting the city. So I think that would be a great place to have some kind of a banner. And if possibly Excel doesn't let us utilize something like that, maybe one of the businesses would let us put something on their property.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I guess I first wanted to start with an email that you all should have received from a Ward 4 resident, Lauren Weatherly. I believe that it was sent to everyone because at least that's what I see in my email inbox, offering some feedback about our program and offering some alternatives for us to consider as opposed to doing the banners. I certainly appreciate the work that staff did in putting this together. I think that they look really nice. But I just want to elevate a couple of things that Lauren's outlined here because, after reading her email a couple of times, everything that she says resonates with me. And first she starts off by sharing her discomfort. And I'm going to read a lot of this because I don't know that everybody's had a moment to read it themselves. And I don't want you all to miss this feedback. So she shares that she felt some dissonance at the conversation about creating banners, and it took her a couple of days to figure out what that discomfort was about. From her perspective, a banner is impermanent. The pursuit of racial justice in our city has to be a permanent commitment. If you create banners to be visible for a period of time, the message might be that you're supportive during this season of Black Lives Matter, but are ready to move on as soon as the noise dies down. She also noted that any public symbol of solidarity lacks meaning, devoid of a firm commitment to deeply examine ourselves as leaders and the systems present in our city. In regards to anti-racism, banners may be viewed as performative or as virtue signaling, which could have some unintended consequences for the city. And then, she mentioned a couple of alternative possibilities that I think are really positive. One is to consider a permanent symbol of solidarity, sending a better message. And let's see, one option is thinking about hiring a Black artist to design and paint a mural on the Northglenn building. The Black Love Mural Festival is happening right now in Denver, and the Black Lives Matter street mural in Denver was designed by a Black artist. So those are a couple of good places to start. Additionally, think about renaming Community Center Drive Black Lives Matter Drive. This is a strategy that many cities use to commemorate important individuals or events. Perhaps there's a well-known Black resident that Northglenn can name a street after. Additionally, she encourages us to continue to discuss possibilities for ways that we can commit to anti-racism, education, and initiatives at the city level. And so I really wanted to make sure that you all heard that. Lauren's feedback is not the only feedback that I've received since our last meeting. And I appreciate that we have banners to replace. I just really struggle with the sentiment that we're, using this as an opportunity to replace old banners. That just doesn't sit well with me. And I guess the other two things I'll share is I didn't know that we were doing police banners outlining our current police values. That also doesn't sit well with me. I think especially given the moment that we're in, I keep thinking about something my mom told me when I was growing up. She would say actions speak louder than words. And I think the banners are nice, but the banners are just a show to me. I want to see us actually commit to building an anti-racist city, and to actually doing the work that we need to be doing as city leaders to break down barriers. So I'll just leave it there.
Thank you. So I have Councilmember Mullica and then Goff next.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. A couple thoughts. One question is how much are these banners going to cost if we move forward with them? Do we have a price estimate?
Right now, we have the capability to do the banners in-house. So
okay.
We have the materials on hand. It would be the staff time. Okay,
great. So that's good to hear. One of the things I thought about when I saw Lauren's email is what kind of hit home for me is when she suggested a mural or some other art piece. I felt like that was kind of hit right on the head because that's what we do in Northglenn. We have lots of art. We have lots of public art, and it's something that we're really proud of. And I felt like something like committing to something like that could be more of a long-term and more permanent statement in our city. And on top of that, I think that, this is going to be a really long process with lots of conversation with residents and our police department. And so I am committed to seeing something that's probably more permanent because, we're probably going to be doing this work a year from now, or maybe even 2 years from now. We're still having these conversations of, how do we make residents feel safe? How do we still continue that value of safety that we've talked about so much? And just how do we kind of move forward? And so, it would be, at one point, these banners are going to have to come down, right? Because it's just realistic of it. And then it would be gone. And so I do kind of value just kind of a longevity type statement and stamp on our community. I think could be really nice. And art is the way we do things here. So it sounded like a good fit. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually I have a couple of thoughts. I do agree with Mayor Pro Tem Wilford that actions speak louder than words. And I think, honestly, whatever we do that people see in terms of some kind of object or display could be interpreted as performative or like, an easy way out. We're just putting something up to make people feel better. The hard work is going to be what we do over time. And that's really what's going to, it just has to stand the test of time. We all have to look at policies and ourselves and the way we do things. So this conversation will continue for quite some time, I feel certain. And I did like the idea of a mural or a sculpture. We do the sculptures. I know there's a process that we go through right now where we just, have a variety of choices and then our citizens vote on a favorite. But we might consider changing that process in some way to pick a sculpture or an artist by a sculptor who is a person of color that might actually reflect the time we're going through right now and have that be a piece that the city purchases. But either one of those, either the mural or a sculpture, either one of those are like way out, it'll be many, many months, before anybody sees that. So an interim statement could be the banners. I don't have a problem with the banners. I think the design turned out quite well. And I think that would be something to tell people that we're not ignoring what's going on. But really, we have to commit to way more than just putting something up for people to look at.
Thank you. Councilmember Downing?
Thank you. First of all, I do appreciate the input that Lauren has provided to us. I think it was very thoughtful. After I read that, and I did consider it for quite a while, I think the banners are a good first step, because this process is going to be going on for a while. So, but what we can do is, as a first step, put those in appropriate areas, and then look at what council wants to do later, if it's a mural or a sculpture or whatever it is. And, just for, some input for Catherine, what we could do as a city is actually commission an artist to do some type of a sculpture. And, I'm not opposed to that at all. We have over at Rains Park, the Peace Pole, over there in the middle, which has all the different languages and, a lot of diversity involved with that. And so I'm very open to doing something like that, but I don't want to wait. And I think the banners are really a great first step. And so, thank you.
Thank you. So I see Ashley will be next, and then Councilmember Peterson. Councilmember Brown, are you wanting to comment as well?
Yeah, I'll come in after Randall if that's okay.
That's perfect. Councilmember Witkovich is next.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to, well, first of all, I also really appreciate what Lauren sent. I read it a couple times and it really gave me a lot to think about, and I do really appreciate it. I agree with Council Members Goff and Downing in that the banners are quick. They're going to get up there pretty quickly. And so I'm fine with them and I like the design of them. But I really do like the idea about a mural or a sculpture. And I really think we should come up with some sort of timeline that we can stick to, make sure it happens and doesn't just kind of get buried in all of our many other conversations that we have to have. I did just have one question. How long do the banners stay up? I guess based on the ones that are still up, it could be a while, but what is the plan for these?
That's a great question, Councilmember Witkovich. We didn't identify a specific time on when to take them down, so I would envision they would be up for several months, but that's certainly something that if council has a specific time frame in mind, we can keep them up for as long as we want to keep them up. We just make sure that they stay in good shape and none of them get damaged. And if one were to get damaged, we'd replace them like we would do with other banners.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Peterson?
I think the banners are fantastic. I think they're beautiful, and I think it's a great recognition by the city of an unquestionable wrong that has happened and is happening and has been happening in the United States for far too long. And I'm glad that we're doing something, and I'm proud to do something proactive about it. So I think the banners are a great first step. I'd like to learn a little bit more before moving forward on a mural or a statue, perhaps opening some things up for citizen feedback and discussion on this. If we did a mural, one of the things would be I would want, or whatever we do to commemorate, we have to ask ourselves, what are we commemorating? Are we trying to embrace and commemorate a movement? Or are we embracing a larger principle of equity and diversity and justice under the law? And if that's the case, that should, certainly extend beyond Black Lives Matter to be a greater representation of diversity, as opposed to the instances that we're currently going through. So I'd like to learn more and talk about this more. So I'm not ready to commit. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm not ready to commit to a statue or a mural at this point until we get, a lot of citizen feedback. And I want to move unequivocally forward on things with the mural. And I have a few other things to say on that, but I'm not sure they're needed to be said at this time.
Okay, well, we can circle back.
Yep.
I have Councilmember Brown next, and then Esquivel, and then Goff again.
I think Julie had her hand up too at one point. So I totally agree with everything that Councilmember Downing and Councilmember Goff is saying. The thing that we have to keep in mind if we start talking about anything else is the length of time that it takes. So the fact that we can get these printed, get these up in a relatively short amount of time, I think it's the way to go. We've all been on the small business grants, and I think people understand how long it takes things to get done through the city now because we hit stumbling blocks. These make an immediate response. As far as Lauren's email, I have read it several times. I really do appreciate the insight, and I am, well aware of her background now. I did not know that she, she said that she has a master's in early childhood development, but it's specialized, I think, for children of color. So I understand that. I have a real hard time with changing the name of Community Center Drive or anything like that, or sending any message like that. I realize I don't have any answers. You know what I mean? All of us don't have any answers. And if we continue to just do things, little things, we're not making what Randall said, basically. We need to realize where we are on this and what position, I believe all lives matter. Half my family is of African American descent. I have Asians in my family. I have it all. So we have to decide how we're going to handle that as a whole issue, because diversity is needed all around. I've been very in tune with it. Antonio helped me understand things about our Latino population. There's just things that I'm learning. I like the banners, but I wonder, are we going, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, so please don't jump after me after this next comment, but why don't we have any gay pride flags up for a gay pride month? Please don't take it as I am not considering Black Lives Matter, because I do more than most people recognize. But what are we doing moving forward? But I do like the banners. I like everything that goes with it, and I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Councilmember Brown. Really quickly, I just wanted to clarify, we are flying a flag for LGBTQ plus community at City Hall right now. So that is on the flagpole today. So Councilmember Escobar. Antonio, you're up.
There was a break in the message there, so I didn't know.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for opportunity to share my feelings. First of all, the banners are a good first step, and I would suggest, or I would encourage us to increase the number of banners from 16 to a greater number. I think the banners on 120th would be well served. I think Community Drive from the Justice Center to the City Hall all the way up to 120th would definitely make a statement, because that's what Northglenn is, Community Drive. That's our headquarters. That's where people see the EB Rains. It's kind of the heart of the city. So I like the banners. I would encourage us increasing the number. Let Heather try to figure that out as to how many polls we can get. But, 30, 50 would not be a problem for me. The letter from Lauren hit to the heart of who I am and what I am. And I think as a person of color, I would not want a majority council who is not of color to come up with an idea that would serve the population that we're addressing here. She goes on and she says, at the very least, I encourage you to convene a group of Northglenn residents who are Black or Indigenous people of color. I'm not sure what the rest of it says there because my computer's not that big. To advise you before making decisions, you know, and I think that's really important. I would propose a 6 or larger commission, at least 6 people who are people of color, and hear their thoughts about how to proceed. And further, I would like to suggest that we commit to a monetary investment of at least $50,000 from our general budget to support whatever it is that they come up with. If they come up with a sculpture, then we support that. If they come up with a mural, then we support that. And there's money and there's a commitment to that support. Because this is going to take some time to do, the banners are a good first step. And I would like to see that progress. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. So I had Councilmember Goff and then Councilmember Mullica.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Escobar kind of beat me to the punch because I was recalling from Lauren's letter that she suggested we get community input and that we have some representatives for the people of color in our community to give us that input and what that we might do. So these ideas about sculptures and murals, those are just what we've come, or she mentioned one of them in her letter, but those are things we've come up with. But there might be something else that would be more meaningful to the people who are most impacted by this. And so I agree with Councilmember Escobar that some way to get more commission together or a group of people together to give input on how this comes into play is a good idea. And I also do like the idea that we start with some kind of initial commitment for, from our budget. I know, we're supposed to be cutting right now, but it will be a long process. And it's a way to signal how important it is for us and that because it is a long-term project and we are going to be working on that. That's kind of a visible symbol of the work that we're going to be doing that is not so visible in terms of, I don't know what we're going to do, training, changing policies, discussions that we might be having over the, next couple of years or more even. That's taken hundreds of years to get to where we are. And, it's going to take a long time to undo some of the damage. And I think that's probably it. That's all I'll say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mullica?
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to ask is if we do move forward with the banners, which it seems like we're gonna do, one of the things I'd like to really be considered about is what is the communication message going out with this? Because as everyone said here on this call, this is our first step. And we recognize that as a council and we recognize that as a city. And so how do we also share that with our community? So folks don't get the wrong impression that, hey, we're just trying to be like, I don't know. Yeah. And like, we are actually committed to doing some of this work. And so that would be one of my asks for this. And then I know that we're kind of jumping away from the conversation, but I do want to add briefly to what Antonio was talking about with having a community focus type group. I think that is just absolutely essential with how we're going to be moving forward. I did attend that Black Lives Matter protest at Reigns yesterday, and it was a smaller group out there, but we literally just ended up just sitting in the grass and having a conversation, which was amazing, actually, just so I could hear all of the questions and concerns that our community has brought up. And so, how do we build on that? How do we have more experiences like that where we as a council and we as leaders in the city sit down and have a conversation with these folks who, are really passionate about getting involved on this subject and really have some great suggestions and great questions that I think are valid. So moving forward with that is is something we need to be really thoughtful about, but also something that, you know, is necessary. It's the next step moving forward.
Thank you. I'm going to weigh in really quickly, and then I'm going to go back out if that's okay. Catherine, thank you for your patience. I have loved everyone's comments and perspectives on this issue. I was with Antonio right away as far as I would like to see more than just the small amount. 16 seems like a lot until you spread it out throughout the city, and then it looks pretty sparse. And so I do support increasing that number. But I also agree with everyone else. To some of the points made in Lauren's email, I truly believe that anything we do has the potential to be seen as performative and lacking sincerity. Any reactionary response. That's why I wasn't a huge fan of the painting on the street, because to me, that's just hey, this is a hot topic. We're in it. We're going to let everybody know. But unless you have the action that goes behind it, it really has absolutely no substantial value. So I have a concern that anything we do, whether it's banners or a sculpture or a mural, a mural can just be seen occasionally by a random resident sometimes in the future. Like even something like that has the potential to be seen as performative and lack value. So I believe, I agree with many council members that the banners are a first step. It's a first visual representation that as a city, we are engaged in this conversation. So to Julie's point, which I loved, what is the communication that goes with the banners? That's key. So making sure that the residents understand what the banners represent, that they are not just a simple, we want to be trendy and throw something up so that you think we're cool too. That's not what it was ever about. It's a very small symbolic gesture where we can show our residents that we are engaging in this conversation, but that we are at step one. We are really needing to engage our diverse community with this conversation. One of the questions I had was, is this conversation appropriate for the Citizens Advisory Board? Is that a place we can go to engage this conversation? Is it an addition to? Is it a partnership with? If we already have an organization that partners with the city in that way, would we need to create a new one? Or is that one we can just enhance, dig in a little deeper, further develop? Or do we need to have a completely separate citizens advisory group for this topic? I think I've had a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls over the last week. And I'm not even exaggerating. Like when I say a lot, there's a lot. I've had great conversations with residents. One of our Native American residents shared a very personal story with me that was just beautiful. And his request to engage, like what can I join? How can I be a part of this conversation? That's what's really exciting for me, is that this is a time when we are engaging residents that we haven't spoken to in the past, that haven't attended ward meetings before. And so making sure that they do feel welcome when they step into the conversation is important. So I guess bottom line is I support the banners with really thorough communication around the why, and also that it is a representation of a first step and that we're committed to doing the work, that it's not simply, just a show, but that we really do believe in the work, and that if we can increase the number, I think would be important. Really quickly, I've been struggling a little bit with this kind of one or the other. Like we can support Black Lives Matter or we can support our police department. And I'm struggling with the fact that we can't do both, because I truly believe it's an and conversation. And that's something that's been really heavy on my heart over the last couple of weeks. And that's just the place I'm going to be coming from. So in response to the police banners, that was in place before. I support them still going up. Our police department still holds those values. I don't see that as performative either. I see that as a demonstration and a sharing of information. They walk that talk. They are committed to those values. So I definitely don't think it is something that's just for show. So if there was a plan to put those up, I support still putting those up. Councilmember Goff, you had your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. The first, since you mentioned the Citizens Affairs Board, and I did serve on that, I have a question. Heather, do you know if that board, all the positions on that board are filled?
Actually, I'd like to ask City Clerk Joanna Small to answer that question.
Okay.
I believe we have 2 vacancies on the Citizens Affairs Board for members in Wards 1 and Ward, I want to say 3, but I would like to quick. It's a 5-member board, 1 from each ward, and then an at-large member.
Okay, well, this is the time that I'm going to speak to our audience. And that for those people who did feel like they wanted to become involved in some way, the Citizens Affairs Board still does need people. And I think that might be a place or a body that could work in conjunction with whatever kind of commission that we come up with to deal with or address whatever I don't know what to call it, memorial or statement, public statement that we're going to be making with the piece of art. But the other thing I'd like to say is that I also would like to encourage tapping into the Youth Commission to see if we have some young people, residents of Northglenn. I know some of them go to the high school, and I don't know if they are all residents, but resident of Northglenn who is could speak as a person of color to participate in this process, because the young people are the ones that have the future ahead of them, and they're going to be growing up in the world that we are now trying to change and create for them to be safe in. And so I really do think it's important to involve some youth. And the communication piece, I think, is important, but we have a great communication department. And since we've said how important that we feel it is, I'm just going to tag along with everybody else who said that. I'm sure they'll be able to figure out a way to do that. So I think that's about all I had to say. Citizens Affairs Board needs more people. We do want people to participate. And I hope that we get more people to participate with whatever we decide we want to do.
Well, I would definitely have Lauren reach out to them because she has some great ideas. If anybody has that contact or anything with her to do that.
City Manager Geyer, did you have something to add? No, you're good. You're muted, though. I don't know.
Sorry. I thought it might be helpful if I read the identified steps that are in the strategic plan to remind council on what we had hoped to start and get in progress this year. And maybe this will help guide what direction you want to give me tonight in terms of doing things sooner than later. So within our diverse community strategic goal, we had identified the development of a race and equity initiative. And part of that was first step, joining the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, which we did last fall. And then identifying funding for the 2020 budget to further this initiative with some initial next steps. Now that has been put on hold given our COVID-19 response, but I think that we're easing into a period of our COVID-19 recovery, that we're starting to feel some breathing space and can start moving forward with some of these initiatives on the strategic plan that got put on hold because we've been focused on COVID-19 response. So a few of those pieces that I'll remind council about include coordinate development of a race and equity task force. That was envisioned to happen this year. Now, we haven't had a discussion about the nuts and bolts of what that looks like, and so we can certainly bring that back to council sooner. The other piece was to conduct microaggression training for elected officials as well as board and commission members along with staff. So that was the primary budget piece that I included in the 2020 budget, and that was included in the reductions because we pulled back to reach that 15% general fund savings, not knowing where we're going to land with the decline in sales and use tax related to COVID-19. So I think we're in a space where we can start moving forward some of these initiatives. If you want to move forward with setting up a task force, or if you want to call it something else, I know the research that I've done in this space, oftentimes communities start with a task force or a committee, and then they later consider something more permanent if that's the way the community wants to move forward. So a permanent advisory board or commission is also an option. And then the training piece, Rupa and I met last week, and she's going to reach out to the city of Boulder because we had been in contact with them last year because they were going to issue an RFP for microaggression training. So she's going to reach out and see where they're at with their training and see if that's something that I can do virtually, piggyback on their purchasing effort so I can get staff trained. An important part of this conversation from my perspective is really having the education put forward and providing a reference point for staff. There's the internal conversation, the external conversation throughout the community, because a big piece of this is really going through an intentional effort of reviewing all of our policies and procedures, not only from an HR process, but also I had a conversation with Brooke today about the comprehensive plan update and taking steps when we bring that project back to council for 2021 about making sure we know how we can really look at that project through a social equity lens. So I just shared a lot, but I wanted to provide the reference point of what council had envisioned, which is in the strategic plan, and that might aid in the conversation we're having. Thank you.
No, thank you for grounding us in that. It's very important because I think I forgot that stuff was in there. So I really appreciate you taking a minute. I know we want to continue the conversation. It looked like Mayor Pro Tem Wilford, you had more?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Meredith, can I come in after Jenny?
You
Sorry,
certainly
Jenny.
can. Thank you.
So I guess I want to just say thanks to everyone. I feel like we're having a very robust conversation around this topic, and I hope that it's one of many longer and more robust conversations that we continue to have. And one thing that I'm definitely noticing in, the comments that folks are sharing is the recognition that this is going to take time, that working through structural barriers and figuring out how we support Black, Indigenous, people of color within our community is going to take time. And we're all going to have to continually work at it. And so I just wanted to elevate that, as something that I was hearing that I completely agree with. And I appreciate that it's been brought up in almost everybody's comments. A couple of other things I wanted to share. So I hear that banners are happening, that folks are seeing them as a first step. I wanted to elevate what my ward partner said around, and the mayor for that matter, said around, if we're going to do it, might as well spread these across the city, because I know when I drive through Ward 4, I see all kinds of random signs. I think I saw one today about like Adams County standing together or something like that. So if we could rein it in a little bit, that would be great. But I really don't want to see us doing these banners, just to replace ones that are old. If we're going to do this, let's just do it. I guess a couple other things that folks have said that I also want to uplift. So when we are having the conversation around, what commission is taking on these conversations? Is it Citizens Affairs Advisory Board? Is it Youth Commission? I think Councilmember Goff brought that up. From my perspective, everybody can and should be having these conversations. I think that, if the Youth Commission, wants to engage in this area, give us feedback, provide recommendations, I would love that. I think that would be really powerful for them and for us. I also think, while I certainly appreciate the work of folks on the Citizens Affairs Advisory Board, hearing that, being reminded that we were going to be moving forward with a race and equity task force, I think that, instead of, punting this over to the Citizens Affairs Task Force or Citizens Affairs Advisory Board, I do think it could be helpful just to move forward and establish a race and equity task force and be really intentional around folks that we're including there. Because one of the things on our banner says that we hear you, we're listening, whatever that is. And I think that it's important for us to actually listen and to make space for voices to be heard and voices that haven't been a part of the conversation as predominantly as, those of white voices. So I just want to lift that up. I really like what Ashley said around establishing a timeline to hold ourselves accountable. And I think that's going to be really important because as we're placing these banners across the city, folks are going to have questions around, well, what does this mean? What are you doing to back this up? And I think we need to be able to answer those questions, not only for our residents, but for ourselves. So yeah, let's all keep having this conversation. It's going to be a long one, but it's going to be a good one too.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown and then Councilmember Mullica.
I just wanted to echo Jenny's sentiments that, this is going to be a long conversation, but Heather, I think you've gone and laid some things out that make me feel really comfortable. I just want to make sure that just food for thought, because that's what I do. I don't want council to manage these conversations. These conversations should not be managed by council. We should, whoever we're electing for the board or whoever we're putting on a commission or the CAB members, they need to have the responsibility, to understand it. I think we get one non-voting member or something on CAB. I'm not sure. I don't listen to Joe when he rambles. But I think we get one member on council, but I don't want this to turn into a micromanaging thing where we're trying as council to micromanage this process. That's my words, Heather. I think you did a great job on how you plan on rolling this out. I would like more information like Jenny had said on, I need some good talking points because none of us know really how to answer all the questions. But I don't think it's council's role in this situation to be the voice for Northglenn unless we're all doing it together. We need to agree what we're talking about. We need to agree to our talking points because when we were elected onto city council, if you remember, I've said this for a long time, our personal agendas had to move over to the side and we had to think for the good of the city. So I just want to take a minute and remind everybody of that. This is going to be a really slow process. I appreciate Heather mentioning, that continuing conversations and action. Those are the things I want to see. Banners are beautiful. Words on streets are beautiful, but I want to see action. To me, those are just here, now go away. So I want to see action, but I don't want us to micromanage the action. That's all I have to say.
I don't believe that's true. I bet you have more to say in just a few minutes. Councilmember Mullica.
Thank you. I'm not really sure how to follow up with that. So I really appreciate some of Becky's words, and something that I've really been struggling with this is how do we as a city and how do we as a council not, I like Becky, what she said, micromanage this conversation, because we have community members who are passionate, who want to come out, who want to share their perspective. And I think we give them space to do that, and we let them help guide us through this process. I don't want, the city to brand any type of work that they're trying to do. I feel like we just need to let it happen. Let the conversations happen. Let's let our community tell us where we need to go, because I feel like that's obviously going to be the best solution, I think, because who we are as individuals and what our personal experiences are is 9. There's 9 of us, right? That's not enough to cover the city. And so I like the idea of moving towards maybe, I don't know, even like an unofficial task force, if you will, for now. Just like, how do we have listening sessions, open up our doors to have conversations between community? And then, to be honest with you, I really think it's going to be organic, and folks are going to really want to organize themselves and really try. And if we give them the opportunity, hey guys, we really need your input. We really need you to help guide us through this process. I really think it's going to be an organic process where we have leaders step up who really start kind of pulling together those voices to work with council moving forward. So I think however we could do it, if we could just let the process happen, I think that could be the best way.
I agree.
That's an excellent point. Councilmember Downing, you got to unmute first for us.
I thought I had, sorry about that. I totally agree with Julie. I think it's going to kind of evolve by itself. But I'm wondering, I love the idea. We have an established commission, which is the CAB. It could be a core group, and all our meetings are open meetings. It's possible to somehow or another develop that core group into the larger organic group. Just a thought process, but I love the idea, and I love the idea of the youth commission. They get totally involved and come up with some great ideas, probably things that we never would. So definitely would like to get both of those involved, and probably any commission member that wants to be involved from any commission should be part of that whole conversation. So I totally support it. I support the idea of increasing the number of banners. I don't know how you do it or where you put them, but because we do have limited polls to put them on, or whatever we want to do. Maybe we devise something else. I'm not sure. But anyway, I would definitely support increasing the number of banners. And thank you, Heather, for bringing forward what we had already started talking about with the strategic plan. I think that's worthy, and we should really kind of incorporate everything that we're talking about tonight into this. So thank you.
Thank you. So I know the study session item was limited to the light pole banners. It took us into a new direction. That was the only other item on tonight's agenda. So I guess my question for council is, are you interested in having a conversation now about what next steps we can advise staff to take with regards to everything that's been talked about tonight? Councilmember Downing.
In what respect?
So I'm wondering, we have given a lot of direction or feedback to our staff, and I'm wondering if they would bring back the highlights, and then we can kind of massage those and see where their next steps are, because there's so many great ideas that we have from every council person that I would just lean on the staff to bring something back to us so we could move forward. I like the banners. That's the next step. So I would lean on staff to bring it back, unless you've got a different idea about that.
Well, I had a wondering, because the pledge that the I guess it was Obama's website. If you go to that link and you look through all of the pieces, all of the action steps that are within there, I'm wondering if that alone is a study session topic where we kind of dig into each piece. I know Chief May and our city manager were willing, I mean, not willing is a terrible way to phrase it. They were just as interested as I was in moving forward and moving in that direction. It needs to be a collaborative piece, but if that's something, because it does outline a pretty tight, you have 90 days to accomplish things, which I think I mentioned on last week's meeting that I appreciate that. That was a very important piece of the program. So maybe that's something that we take apart as a council and dig into a little bit more as a next step. I'm not sure. Councilmember Brown, you seem to have a question.
No, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. You were kind of coming in and out. City Manager Geyer.
Thank you, Mayor Leidy. One of the suggestions that I'll make to council in terms of, I think I've heard everything that you've shared, and so I'm trying to put it into a sequential order of next steps. Banners being the first step, and really the desire to have a much larger community conversation that's going to be ongoing, but you want it to be organic and you want it to develop based on the input of our residents. I think it may be appropriate timing for council to develop a statement. Staff could draft it and then run it through council as we are committed to moving this conversation forward type statement. And what we can do is set up a landing page on the council website or on the website in a very visible area, which then we start outlining and tying together the different pieces at play here. So we've got the efforts in terms of moving forward this discussion on diversity inclusivity. But we also have the police department assessment and the next steps based on council direction related to that item. We have the My Brother's Keeper promise, and they're all interrelated. So I think, one of the things that I heard council express last week, and I believe I'm hearing it again tonight, is that this idea of listening tours. So staff could bring back a recommended approach with an outside facilitator. I don't know who that is, but we can find someone who would be the leader of those listening sessions to ask questions when appropriate, but really to guide our residents and really giving us feedback, which then could lead into whatever formal or informal type of task force you may want to have in keeping with the strategic plan. But that wouldn't be in replacement of the PD next steps. It would be complementary to what I'll be sharing with council in terms of next steps with that PD assessment based on council's direction last Monday night. My goal is to bring that forward to you and share next steps by midweek this week. So there's a lot of different pieces and I see them as being connected. And so I don't know how to react to that. And if I'm on the right track, I definitely heard increase the number of banners. And we can do that, and don't worry about the logistics of it. We'll figure that out and get those taken care of.
A couple of things. First of all, I want to thank you and staff for getting all of the information with the PD policies and FAQs up on the website right away. It's a very nice page. And I think if we can all direct residents to it, that may help with some of those basic level questions. But that was a big ask and that happened right away. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I love the phrase listening tour. And I also love the idea of having a facilitator because that gives us the opportunity to participate fully and to give our attention to the listening if we're not responsible for helping move the conversation forward. I guess I wanted to do a quick check-in. This was another kind of wondering I've had over the last week is in recent meetings, we've had some pretty heated conversations about the budget. And I want to make sure that council is on board with things that are going to cost money, because not very long ago we had a pretty long, I think that was our 6-hour record-breaking meeting about the budget, but there were a lot of opinions and a lot of, anxiety around using our reserve and who feels comfortable using it, who doesn't want to let it dip, because we want to make sure we're ready if there's another, influx of COVID, and wanting to be really conservative financially. Also lining up with, but we want to commission a mural or a sculpture. We want to pay a facilitator to do this work. Like, I'm okay with all of it. I just want to make sure that we're having those conversations so that we're not saying, don't spend money, cut your budgets, but now we want you to spend money, so do it. Like, I just want to make sure that council is super clear and so we're not confusing staff and making things harder for you. So does anyone want to speak? Oh, Councilmember Peterson.
Yeah, I'm not against, but I'm not fully on board yet with a statue or a mural based on cost. Mural, I'm sure would be cheaper than a statue. But if we're $3 million in the hole, I'm not sure if $50,000 expenditure for a statue is appropriate to our residents at this point. So would take some convincing and would like to learn more on that.
Hi, how are you?
So does anyone have any other thoughts about that? I just wanted to make sure it was in everyone's mind. Councilmember Malika?
Yeah, I think that's, a fair question, and it's something that we need to be thoughtful moving forward. Right now, I actually think it's probably too early to have this conversation because we actually don't know what we're going to do yet. So when we start coming up with a plan, when we start talking about, next steps, I was definitely one who was, very cautious about spending money moving forward. I do think that this work is important for our community, and so I think we're going to have to move forward and have that conversation when we actually have a plan. But I mean, it's an important conversation to be having, and it's important work that we got to do. So we have to. I feel like we have to figure out a way to make that happen.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I'll spend all the money. I'm good.
Uh-oh. Don't get rid of the credit card.
Just kidding. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that we need to get input from our community because we've talked about a sculpture and we talked about a mural, but that's just our idea. We don't know what would be the best way to make a statement or express the hopes, dreams, concerns. I don't even know what our residents, would want. Would they want something just that kind of expresses the turbulent times we're going in right now? Is it specific to Black lives? Is it to, I don't know. So I really do think that getting some kind of a commission that would be people of color, Indigenous, Black, whoever, the gay, lesbian, LGBTQ plus, everybody that is not, in the mainstream. They're not the typical people that participate or we hear from all the time. I want to hear from those people. And that I think will help us decide what it is we're going to do. It may not be, it may not be anything that we've imagined. So I think I'm okay with spending the money to get some kind of a listening tour or organizing to get. A group of people together. The grassroots movement is fine, but I just think of all the times that we've put things out and tried to get people to get involved. And I know times are different now, but our past record has been very small numbers of people will come out, to get involved in something. So it could be really different now. We could get tons of people. I hope so. But to me, that would be like the first priority. Well, it's the second, I guess. The first, we're going to put up the banners, and more banners is better. But then I do think we need to figure out how we're going to get that community input before we decide how much more money we would want to spend, or any money, or what it is we're going to spend it on. I want to hear from them.
Great. I'm going to go to Ashley next, but I had a quick question for Heather. Would it be appropriate to ask, because I know Diana has been on all of our calls, she's listening, she's also hearing what council input is being provided. Would it be appropriate to ask the communications team to come up with some ideas? Like, we could do the listening tour and we could structure it in this way, and this is what it would cost. We could push out ward meetings in a different way. Julie and I were tossing around, like, she was sharing how awesome her little circle on the grass was. Is that something that we can facilitate and actually do in-person meetings in a way that's safe, but also not in the virtual format? How might we do that if we had 40 people and 4 council members and everybody just circled up? There's a ton of different ideas. Is that something we want to spitball tonight? Is that something that we want to ask communications to toss around and then come back to us with? So
my initial reaction is, because we have the time, if you want to take more time and spitball it, as you say, I'm happy. I think it would be helpful for staff to hear the different ideas from council. The fortunate news that I have is I have draft guidelines on outdoor events from the governor's office. So I'm really hopeful that we can, in the days ahead, shift from our virtual. It doesn't mean council meetings are changing yet, but I think we're starting to see some easing of restrictions and flexibility that can help us in this process.
Cool. Okay. Councilmember Witkovich, and then Mayor Pro Tem. I did see your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. I do like your idea about having different options to consider in the cost. I don't really have any new ideas to share now. I was just speaking to the budget piece, and I'm on board with spending the money to get a facilitator for listening tours and that sort of thing. But, I agree with council members Goff and Mullica that we don't know what we would be spending money on yet. So it's just really not the time to have that conversation. But this is important work, and I would be ready and willing to spend money.
Yes, on my spending team. Councilmember Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I first want to say Zoom fatigue is real. I totally agree with you and would love if we were able to safely do in-person conversations. I'm going to be really interested to see what those draft guidelines look like. But I do think, people are paying attention. I've gotten tons of emails and had phone calls and seen a ton of activity on Nextdoor, and I'm sure that all of you have as well. But people are paying attention, and I think, setting up some sort of listening tour or some other way for us to get some real feedback from our community is worth the expense. I don't look at this as like a nice to have thing right now. I look at this as like a necessary to have item, or necessary to spend expense right now, that really is for the health and the safety and the well-being and the future of our community. So I too would really love to see some different options. And, I guess one specific request I have is that when we are considering facilitators, I'd really like to identify a Black, Indigenous, or person of color to be our lead facilitator for these sessions specifically. So thank you.
Okay. City Manager Geyer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for your comment. And just to back up a little bit, this exercise wouldn't necessarily be a communications team exercise. This is going to be a Rupa, Heather. Once I get my HR director on board, I really envision that individual being our chief diversity officer for the organization, which is a role that cities who have had been very intentional about these conversations in terms of becoming more welcoming, becoming more inclusive, they've established that role. So that's somewhat on the horizon, a few months away. But we will lean on our partnership with GARE and Rupin. I have a call this Friday with our regional director through GARE. And I've already put in an ask of him to help guide us in terms of not only identifying a good instructor for the council's implicit bias training, also with next steps with staff training. So certainly we'll add the facilitator for the listening tour piece to the mix as well. So thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments? Do we have any ideas we want to propose? Councilmember Peterson and then Goff.
Yeah, in relation to a listening tour, I think similar to what we did with CARES funding is maybe we start a brainstorm list via email and just start talking about things, and no idea is outrageous and no idea is wrong about ways that we can fulfill. Again, let's stick to the strategic plan here and ways that we can fulfill our race and justice initiatives and stand for diversity and equity. So we could all go through 1,000 different ideas, but I think one step is starting that brainstorm session, and maybe not tonight, but start as we start thinking about these things, like I said, akin to what we did with CARES Act, and kind of going through and prioritizing things, and we can make a list and those can be further prioritized in conjunction with community support. So off the top of my head, I'm thinking, and again, brainstorm, right? Do we have a telephone town hall focused simply on race and equity initiatives? Other things is, can we communicate and partner with our community members and our community organizations, such as Anything Library, in terms of, are there things that we can do to promote what we're advocating for, both in politics and policy, but have structured discussions and lectures and inquiries and book studies around this topic. Can we develop money? I mean, and we've talked a little bit about everything that's symbolic, but would that money be well spent or better spent doing things at the grassroots level? Scholarships, diversity initiatives, leadership programs, and trainings within. So again, I'm just talking out loud, and none of these ideas necessarily have rocket fuel behind them, but why don't we start a brainstorm list of ways that we can begin promoting this work with the community listening tour at the top of that list?
That sounds good. Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm a bit confused by Councilmember Peterson's comments, because the brainstorming I thought was that we might be doing tonight was to be coming up with ways to elicit community input, but I guess I was wrong on it. Can somebody help me? And then I have something else to say, but am I just way off on that, or what happened here?
I think it might be both. Okay. I guess I didn't hear Councilmember Peterson go too far off. I mean, he had some I just wasn't sure. Larger scale, grander ideas.
Okay.
But we're talking about community engagement.
Yeah, my point, Councilwoman Goff, was I think community engagement conversation is at the top and at the heart of this. And along with that, we can start brainstorming, ideas for community engagement, not to dictate or anything, but community engagement and feedback is the heart of this. But it's along with whatever else we might start thinking about ways that we can plant seeds in other citizens and other leaders in our own minds. So 6 of one, half dozen of the other, not exclusive.
All right. Well, thanks for the clarification. I mean, since we're brainstorming, I'm going to just throw a couple of things out there that occurred to me. The Northglenn Fitness Center is offering quite a lot of classes online, and that would be one way to contact people who are mostly, I don't know, 90% or whatever, Northglenn residents. I guess there could be some people who paid to, use the rec center facilities and are at these classes that aren't Northglenn residents, but mostly they would be. So that would be a group of people that could be contacted in some way to find out if they would like to, get involved. And then the other one would be the senior center, again, if any of those people have something in the youth commission. I mean, I think these groups that we have, organizations, commissions, boards that are part of the Northglenn larger like governmental group. I don't know what to call it exactly, but those people we should maybe try to approach them, find out if any of those people would like to participate, or if they can direct us somewhere like another, an after school program, or I don't know, like a Kiwanis club, or I don't know, just some other kind of community, organizations that actually exist in Northglenn that we might be able to get people, interested in participating.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really appreciate that we're thinking about ways that we want to solicit feedback, but I almost wonder, and maybe this is a discussion for another day when we've all had a moment to, I guess, come prepared and be thoughtful. But I feel like instead of asking how are we going to talk to our community, I kind of want us to focus on what do we want to hear from our community? What information are we trying to get? What questions do we want to ask? Because I feel like otherwise, like I'm just trying to understand like where we're going with it. And I love listening sessions. I love community engagement. I love hearing all of the ideas and hopes and dreams that our residents have. I just want us to be thoughtful about what specifically do we want to know.
Councilmember Witkovich.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem about that. Like, what information is it that we want? Let's see, I literally think I just lost my train of thought. Oh no, here it is. So to me, it seems like the training is going to be really important, maybe before we figure out what kind of information we want to get. I don't know if that's true or not, but I understand there's RFPs and all that involved with those bigger trainings, but are there some other like resources that we can tap into? I know Heather mentioned, we joined, forgive me, I don't know what it was, but maybe there's some resources there, some free resources where we can start looking into that, doing some trainings on our own. And that could also help inform us about what it is we need and want to get from our community. I like the ideas from Council Members Goff and Peterson about reaching out to organizations within Northglenn to help us facilitate that conversation once we know what it is that we want.
Councilmember Brown, how are you feeling about this topic?
I think we're all on point. I think that we're being very thoughtful in the conversation, which, is really my first point, is I want to make sure I make a difference, we make a difference. I did think about a public, discussion at the theaters, you know what I mean? A discussion between our leaders of color and things like that. So I don't know if that's appropriate, but our leaders of color know more than we do, That's just my one suggestion. I think we are on topic. I think that spitfiring is a good start. I think it's a good start, but there are things that I want to do that are, you may not get fluff and puff about it, but they make a response, or they show that you're listening and participating, and it may not be money. I mean, it may not be a mural. It may not be a statue. It may be funding for a program or something, but we need to know about those things before we move forward. So yes, I think that a town hall, we seem to be getting, from what I'm hearing, a lot of response from the community on those. I think that a town hall is great. I think that we need to use those as much as possible, especially right now, because we are in the most stressful stage of my life ever. So, I mean, I'm up for having more of those, and I'm up for engagement on them, even if they are topic driven like this, or our police department, like our next one, anything like that. So that's my soapbox.
So, Councilmember Brown, I want to sort of paraphrase a little bit and then possibly add on. So, what I heard you say was engaging our city leaders of color. And I feel like that's an amazing idea. Kind of going back to some of the things that have been said tonight already about having organic conversations, but also making sure we're connecting the right people, because I'm probably not going to have an answer. Even if we develop the best question ever, I'm not going to answer it. So to have, I mean, I like, you had thrown out a couple terms, so I really like the idea of having some sort of panel discussion. If we can put people every other seat in the theater, maybe, or maybe we do an outdoor theater, but some sort of panel discussion, I think, would be really thought-provoking. And if we paired a panel with kind of breakout conversation groups, with also the opportunity for people to say, you know, I attended this, I listened to the panel, I, you know, spoke in my 10-person group in the grass, and I also feel very passionate that I want to sign up to be a part of the community task force. And so we kind of bring it all together. And then, you know, I think we just throw a food truck in the parking lot and we've wrapped it all into an event. I don't know, but I think we can, I like those pieces you heard about, or that you said about having specific community leaders, because we have quite a few and they're really untapped resources. So if we can reach out and ask those questions, and then maybe they can help develop the next steps. I liked that piece, so thank you. Councilmember Muller, I saw your hand. Julie, did I see your hand?
Did you say my name?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, sorry, it broke up in the middle. I was like, who's she talking to? Okay, great. Couple thoughts, just briefly. I think one thing that we need to really be mindful about is, especially, you know, I really like a lot of the ideas that came out, and especially, Raina, when you were talking about the libraries, I was like, that's so cool. Like, I would love to partner with other organizations to make this a bigger movement. I think it's really important that we focus on kind of what the discussion is now. I could really see this task force growing into something that's very large, addressing a lot of issues, but it is important that we realize that, you know, a lot of people right now want to talk about racial justice and they want to talk about police reform. And I mean, that is the purpose of Black Lives Matter. And it's also really important that I just got an email from somebody who's like, hey, before you guys put Black Lives Matter on all of the polls, just so you know, I hope everyone has looked up what are the values of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I, of course, you know, I'm all for this. I think this is what we need to be doing. But, you know, if we're going to be supporting Black Lives Matter, then we're supporting Black Lives Matter. And we're supporting the work that they've outlined in their value statement. So it's important, I think, that everyone kind of go and look that up and make sure that we're addressing those issues. So, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is the topic at hand right now is actually going to be more focused towards our police system. So, like, that's really the feedback that I feel like a lot of people want to move towards right now. That's the first conversation people want to be having right now. It is going to move into broader conversations about disparities in education and disparities among, you know, health disparities and environmental disparities and all of these other things. But, you know, we have to realize if we're supporting Black Lives Matter, then we are supporting police reform, and we're having that conversation specifically about police reform with our community and racial justice. So I just want to throw that out there to everyone at the group, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Thank you. Excellent point. Antonio, is that your little blue hand?
I don't get to see my hands. I don't know what color it is.
The little teeny blue hand.
But means we are focused on color. Let's not forget the people of color. And the more steps we build into this process, the longer it's going to take. So, I'm the old keep it simple thinker. Just decide whether we're going to do a town hall, get information, and get our convene our commission or appoint our commission or whatever we want to call it. Instead of trying to figure out what we're going to do 4 months from now, let's talk about what we're going to do next week. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I hope everyone can jump on the call Wednesday. I think that's really important. And just to kind of know what it looks like from the other side. If you participate online, just type in any comment or question. But I encourage you to participate as well. So if something comes up, if you want to add a comment, if you want to ask an additional question, just follow the procedures. I think you press #3 or something. I explained it at the beginning, but it comes up on a big screen and we'll see your name. And so if any council members jump in, we'll call on you to add question or comment right away. Councilmember Peterson?
Is that 6 or 7?
6, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. This isn't a question or anything. I just wanted to point out that just prior to that town hall, I am having an Anythink Library board meeting. So I may be a little late, but I am planning on participating.
Okay. Well, does anyone have anything else for council tonight?
Can I ask Amanda a question?
Sure. Yes, she is.
Hey, Amanda, this is probably a selfish question. Do you want to talk before we talk to our youth commission, or how do you want to handle that? Do you want me to call you tomorrow?
We could certainly open that up as a update with the Youth Commission during their regular meeting tomorrow. I think it's probably important to encourage them to help serve as ambassadors to the community and actually seek out other youth that might have the Black Lives Matter movement as something that is they can feel really passionate about. There may be some youth commissioners that also fit that bill, but I think there's probably other youth in the community that it would be important to include in that conversation.
I agree. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Malika?
I just want to make a quick comment. The protest yesterday was led by a 17-year-old Latina from our community. So we do have young people interested.
Tell her about Youth Commission.
I will.
That'd be awesome. Okay, any other final closing thoughts for council? No, okay. Well, hearing none, we are adjourned. Oh, no, one more thing from Julie. What do you got?
Sorry guys, I forgot about something real quick. So I just wanted to clarify with the group. I think CML, are they having their meeting next week? And did we decide who's going to be voting for, they have their elections every year. Did we decide is anyone going to that or participating in that? Is that you? Okay, awesome. As long as we know who's voting, that's the most important thing.
Yes, I got it.
Vote for me.
Joanna hooked me up. Heather?
I was just going to add, did everyone receive the CML email where they had the link to the different candidates for the board. And I think the way most cities do this is you would provide the mayor feedback on your perspectives on, and then she casts the vote for the city as a whole.
Okay. Because there is one Adams County representative or one person from Adams County who's going on. I think that's the only one. So just food for thought.
Okay. Councilmember Wilford.
When do you want feedback, Mayor Leidy, on who we'd like to see voted?
I believe the meeting's on the 25th, so before that day would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, any strong feelings, let me know. I think some of us are starting to feel the loss of CML, and so I don't know if there's any way to connect in some way. I think the learning at CML is always great, but we've always talked about the fact that it's the connection to other elected officials in the state, but also it gives us an opportunity to connect socially. And it's something that I think we may have taken for granted, but when it's not happening, we're all starting to feel Hello?
Hello?
Oh. Anyway, so if there's any interest in getting together for a social event just to connect as we would at CML, I'd be up for that if anyone wants to propose something. So I know it's
looking proud.
We could have a picnic, maybe. I don't know.
Hey,
Put Antonio in a bubble.
Oh, sorry.
Becky, are you talking to us?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, we didn't hear you.
Okay, I would also like to, Heather, if you look at the comments on YouTube, I would like the correct way to respond to Mr. Bromley. I think that he is not the only one in the community who feels that way. So I think that his opinion deserves to be addressed.
Do you want to do that now? I don't have that up.
I don't have it up either. Could you read it to us?
Yeah, no. Putting up a political group of activist banners is irresponsible. So my only point in pointing that out is that although we have a community, that embraces Black Lives Matters, right? Not everybody appreciates us getting into the mix of it. So I would like, Heather, for you to work with Corey and, maybe give me a response to that. He's in what, Ward 3, Julie?
Sorry, what was that?
I think he's in Ward 3, isn't he?
Mark? I believe he is, yeah.
Yeah. I just think that's an important...
One thing, because I really appreciated whoever emailed Julie, just kind of making sure that everyone's on the same page. I had pulled some stuff off the website and I'm going to send it to council so that you have quick access to it. There's a lot in it. And so I do think it is important that if we are committed to, I think the other banner is a little more inclusive, right? We hear you, we love you, we're here for you, whatever it says. That I think is a little more simplistic, but I appreciate both of them. And so when I look at the Black Lives Matter, I think to say that it's irresponsible would also say that the pride flag at City Hall, I think he'd probably have the same opinion. Because I agree. I think there's just, we have residents that have opinions like that. I believe that we collectively as a city council have committed to having an inclusive committee where everyone is welcome. And so when you read through some of the pieces that I pulled off of the Black Lives Matter website, that's what it's about. It's about all people being super inclusive. And so I do recommend, I really appreciate Julie bringing that forward, that everyone read through it. And if you have any reservations, especially after hearing Mr. Bromley's comment, then reach out to Heather right away. But I think as far as tonight goes, we made it quite clear that it is a message to our community that says we are listening, we want to be inclusive, we want to be the best we can be, and it's a symbol of step one of a process that we're committing to. So, City Manager Geyer.
And I would just add, Mayor Lady, under City Council strategic goal number 6, which is diverse community, your goal definition that was developed by many of you is maintain and celebrate our diverse community. So I think all of the discussion that you had this evening aligns with that strategic goal that you established last year through the strategic planning process. And it's actually digging deeper, going further in terms of that commitment to the community.
I agree. Thank you. Becky, is there anything else we should address before we say goodbye?
No, I just miss
we might as well.
I miss you guys. I'm in California packing it up. So miss you guys.
All right. Well, be safe.
If you guys get to happy hour, go think of me.
All right, we'll do. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great night. We are now officially adjourned.